Hello, back to
Hello,
SEO
Ron.
conspiracy. Bonjour, Monsieur Dixon Jones. Hope all is well.
Yeah, everything's great. Everything's good. How are you? What are we talking
Oh,
about today?
today we're talking about. Well, again, it's not only gonna be white hat versus black hat. It's gonna be about Google guidelines. Is that the law? What are you supposed to do about it? Should you just follow it or
I,
not?
I, I love the fact that Google thinks that they should be the world's policemen or police people. It's crazy, isn't it? Half the things that they say, no, of course you shouldn't have to believe in Google's guide. What Google says is what's in Google's interests to say. What I would say though is that often people ignore Google's guidelines at their peril.
Hmm.
I think that the documentation that's there is a lot more than most SEOs have ever read. I mean, there's a lot of it, and when you go through all of the stuff, and you realize some of the background reasons as to why they say some stuff, you realize that they're trying to build their world from a perspective of crawling all of the content and organizing the world's information, and you're trying to look at the thing from the perspective of trying to get Google to send me visitors to my website. And these are not always the same objectives. But when you realize what Google is trying to do, and the recommendations they're making, then sometimes it does make, well, usually it makes sense to follow the guidelines. The problem is what Google doesn't say. And there you definitely need to think a little bit around Google's motivations.
I'm not a big fan of the new PR team, but I loved Mike Cuts because when you were able to read between the lines, when you were able to understand what he was not saying, it gave you a lot of information. Nowadays, it's always the same: build a great website and blah 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 blah. It works. You are an example. I'm an example. I never, for my own SEO blog and building great content, doing the stuff, being remarkable in the sense you need
Yep.
to be noticed, it
Yep.
does work. But that's for the top 1% of the people who are the best at what they do. So what about the no the rest of us, right? And it's
I still maintain that everybody can be good at something, and you should try and be the best. Even if you're a hairdresser, you're the best hairdresser in your village, and you're the most remarkable one in your village. You have a thing that you're good at. Um, but certainly, I don't think the way to get around Google's guidelines is to try and always think as if Google is being the enemy. I think the thing to do is to uh, try and work out where the gaps are in what Google is talking about. And then, so they don't talk about links very much. A very good example. They try to suppress links so much over the years, and they keep coming back to the story of oh, links are only important for discovery. Fuck it, not true. Excuse my language, but it doesn't appear that that is true. I don't see very many SEOs who are saying that they don't still count. I think that they completely misunderstand what is a good link. But Google doesn't really want to labor those points because it's not in Google's interests to to help webmasters manipulate their algorithm. And of course, if we want to do search engine optimization, by definition, trying to get more traffic to your website is manipulating Google. That's just what it is. So it becomes impossible not to be a black hat if you follow the strictest guidelines interpretation of Google's guidelines. Everybody is a black hat.
the only. I mean, I don't even have a problem with that. It's just that I see a lot of people saying something in public, and I know for a fact that in their job they are not doing what they say. I'm not like that. If you want to know how to buy links, I'll tell you how to buy links. I don't care. It's at your own risk. There are two ways to go about it. I come from the black hat. I started with that, and it's if you read The Prince by Machiavelli, a lot of people understand wrong that book, because that book is not about a guide for evil people how to do evil. It's for the good prince to learn what the evil people do, to not get his head chopped off, and to know evil, to do good, gives me a tremendous power, because I know exactly where is the yellow line. I know exactly if I cross it and I push too hard or not, and I can almost like guarantee if whatever risk I'm taking. And the worst case is people not knowing that they are crossing the line, because they just don't know. They don't have the information, or I don't know. They just don't want to know. I don't know what it is. Or
I think there's another thing there. What used to be white hat went black hat somewhere along the line. We just didn't. I didn't. You didn't change what you were doing, but at some point, someone said iframes are bad, or or frames are bad, or page rank sculpting is bad. I think page rank sculpting is pretty stupid, but because it doesn't often work very well because people don't understand page rank. But we'll come back to that another time.
Yep.
But a lot of the things that that Google says you should do, they tend to have a second agenda, usually, for everything they do. Actually, I get the feeling that every Google decision has to have something that they can say to their customers that's good for their customers, and then has to have a secondary metric, a secondary success for Google. If it doesn't make money for Google, or doesn't, increase Google's power or authority or control or whatever, then it's not really important for them. So, it's always trying to have an outward message and then an inward reward for Google as well in everything they do. And I think that's comes out in the guidelines sometimes, and that's why you need to see Google's guidelines as advisory, not compulsory.
I don't know if it's Picasso, another artist, who said, good artists copy, great artists steal. What does that mean? Is that, yeah, you can just copy whomever tells you to do something, or the Google guidelines, or whomever from Google is saying, and it's the whole difference between average good and being a really great, a really SEO rock star, right? Who's gonna achieve results, whatever. The number one quality of a good SEO is you never give up. Okay, never, ever, ever give up, and you're gonna succeed. You always find a way. You never give up. That's it. And if you're able to steal, meaning if you're able to take the information, make it your own. And I do understand that it takes a lot of work, but I can deny that tens of 15,000 hours maybe spent on just, back in the days, you remember, it was, you did something, and around 2-3 o'clock in the morning, the data centers were starting to move.
The Google dance, yeah. The Google dance, yeah.
And then that was much, easier. It was different because we didn't have the information. You couldn't go on YouTube and say, how do I optimize a title tag? It didn't exist. There wasn't forums, but
you use the phrase in context of a good SEO versus a great SEO. The idea, good people borrow ideas, and great people steal them outwardly. And I think here's an interesting another way of looking at that, because of course Google is, or was for many, many years, literally stealing everybody's data, taking it with or without their permission, and keeping a copy of it on their own servers. So they had their own index of the internet. They had taken all your content, and you can still cache that content today. So so they have literally stolen everybody's content and legally seem to have got away with it. I think in the longer term, though, that's causing them problems, particularly in Europe, with news, especially with news teams in France. but then they have moved to another area where they're now saying, okay, we need to have our own version of knowledge. And so the knowledge graph is taking over from web pages. So that's going to change things in the 2020s and 2030s. Google's going to have its own huge library of information, which is drawn from web pages, but it's the concepts that are drawn from the web pages as opposed to the actual words on the page all the time. So yeah, long term they're going to it's not going to be about what's on your web page. It's about whether Google's knowledge base is going to give its information, put you in their information and send traffic back to your website.
Oh, if we, it's another topic for another day, but I believe it's going to be, Google is going to be all around you, right? It's not going to be,
Sure.
And this thing is going to be a device from
Yeah.
You've seen Matrix?
Yeah,
That's where
absolutely.
we're going, right?
Yeah, and Facebook as well, and Apple for that matter as well. So all of them are,
Now with the situation, they're gonna put a chip in our arm. I'm getting tested Wednesday, and now it's a paper or an app or whatever it is. But
yeah.
don't get me wrong, they're gonna put a chip here, and then from here it's gonna go there, and well,
you don't need the chip. You've got a phone. You never put your phone down. They didn't need the chip.
It's going to be funny. Well, not a topic for another day, but it's going to be
Sure.
funny when you're going to be able to hack people's brains.
Anyway, my point was that if Google are trying to take all that information for themselves, and of course their agenda ultimately is a long way from your agenda. So at its core, just taking Google's guidelines and treating them like the law is a very, very big mistake for SEOs, even the white hat ones.
Like Don Corleone would say, keep your friends close and your enemy closer.
I'm pretty sure that Machiavelli said that as well.
meaning you shouldn't, like you said before, don't take Google as the enemy. Take the information, steal it. Be able to read between the lines, make it your own.
Barry Schwartz went to Washington, went to Capitol Hill, and because Matt Cutts now works basically 2 yards from the White House, and he went all the way in there to go and talk to Matt Cutts last year, and did a video with Matt, who's now moved on to other things, of course. So he's obviously working in the White House on other bits and pieces. But he was talking about the old days, and one of the things he said, and I could see myself with a bottle of beer in my hand as he said this. He said, the number of times I went to conferences and I just chatted, and he said, and because I wasn't drinking and the SEOs were, the amount of stuff I found from the SEOs, and I just thinking that was me every single time. And I just, I'm the world's worst one for keeping a secret. Don't give me a secret. I'm not.
Oh, I've seen numerous times, like if with I love my cuts and his little smile and someone saying, hey, why did my 75 websites don't rank number one? And the next day it was all gone.
They're all gone. Yeah. I remember Dave Naylor coming in and talking about how Yahoo images or something, some image stuff on Yahoo was passing PageRank, and I just saw Matt Cutts go, oh. And then 24 hours later, it didn't.
Yeah, again, to close up the topic, Google guidelines is not the law, but from a black hat perspective, be careful. It's very, very easy when you go to the dark side to break the law. Meaning, you hack a website, you take advantage. It could be even automatic. Bots do it very well. They use vulnerabilities, right? Exploit, right? Weaknesses in technology, and they say, "Oh, I'm not destroying anything. I'm just putting a page with my links." Well, that's illegal. That's years of prisons. That's hundreds of thousands of pounds, euros, or dollars in fine. That's illegal.
Yeah.
That might be one of the easiest way to build links if you're a black hat, but that's, I mean, everybody, again, you do what you want, but
Yeah.
From my point of view, that's breaking the law.
Yeah. There's Google law and then there's real law, and they're
Yeah,
not the same thing. Not the
exactly.
same thing at all. Yeah.
Okay, next time, what are we
What are we
going to
talking
talk
about then?
about? We could talk about if we could stay on the Google index topic of the main index versus the complementary index.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's do that.
Thank you, Dixon. See you next time.
Bye bye.